Hello, welcome back to Spoonie Squared, and this is where I'm talking about autism and other chronic conditions and how that can impact us in the workplace. So today's topic applies certainly if you've got an autism diagnosis and if you've disclosed that to your employers, but it also honestly, it sort of applies to all the people. But certainly if you've got a chronic condition, if you're neurodivergent, or if you've got other disabilities. So I wanted to talk about this because I really felt like one of the big things that comes up a lot of the time when we're talking about autism in the workplace is that people really focus on the deficits, on the challenges that you might have because of your diagnosis or because of any other condition, instead of focusing on the strengths that you can bring to the workplace. And honestly, this is why I say that this applies to everybody, because that so often is the case. And where does it start? It starts with yourself. So are you looking at yourself and seeing all the reasons why you are going to find it hard in the workplace, why you might be having some challenges in the workplace, maybe why you feel like you're not delivering as much or as high quality as you could be delivering in the workplace. So it really starts with you. If you're doing that and you're not looking at yourself and saying, I've got certain needs that need to be met, but then I have these strengths that I can bring to the party. I have these skills, I have this knowledge, I have a network, I have an energy, I have a passion, I have all these different things that I can bring into the workplace. And if nothing else in this video, I just want you to make sure you look at how you're talking to yourself, talking about yourself in terms of are you focusing on your deficits and the things where you feel like you're not good enough, or are you focusing on your strengths and the strengths that you bring to the party? So that's like the first thing. And of course, that is relevant, like I said, it's so relevant to yourself, talk to yourself, but it's also relevant to the other people around you. Often people are going to have a picture in their head of what it means to be autistic, or like I said, it can apply to other conditions as well. And when they've got that, which might have lots of misconceptions for a start, or it might really, really focus on some of those things that are deficits. I think with autism, there is a mixture. We do get two things. It's not that the kind of common prototype in somebody's head is that there are challenges, and maybe they picture meltdowns or poor social skills, poor communication skills, and they also picture people who can kind of maybe super smart, maybe really good at remembering a lot of things, who might be really good at maths or science or like a specific area of focus. So there are these preconceived notions already, and actually when you're talking to other people, you can play into that a little bit in terms of, well, you can say the notion of hyperfocus, for example. If that's something that you can bring to the party, then that's something that they might already be familiar with in their own cognitive prototype of somebody with autism. So I'll talk a little bit more about all of the different strategies we can use in a minute. Also linked to all of this is people's biases about what it means for somebody to be autistic. And they might kind of over fixate on certain aspects, certain traits that you bring into the workplace once they know that you have autism. And so again, this can be difficult because it might mean that they're going to focus on something very specific, certain communication challenges maybe, and if they fixate on something, then that becomes bigger. So again, it's all about making sure people see your needs and see that you are providing strategies to help with that. I have a noisy cat here again. But also that they're not just fixating on these particular things. And again, I say this about other people, but please, this is also about yourself. And I'm saying this because I know I do it. I fixate on the things that I think are weaknesses, that I think need to be changed, things that I think are deficits. And actually, when you just fixate on that, on I'm not good enough, it can get you into a really unhealthy thought loop instead of instead of looking at that thing and then thinking, what's the strategy that I need so that this doesn't become too much of a weakness, so it doesn't stand in my way too often. But that's all you need to do. That's all you need to think about it. And then you move on to focusing on your strengths. People in the workplace have probably had pretty limited training on autism. Unlike you, they probably have not been down a rabbit hole of YouTube videos where they get to understand perspectives of many different people with autism, especially those who maybe are late diagnosed or high functioning. And so it's very common that a lot of things are misunderstood. Again, this is across the board on diversity and inclusion, but I think there is bound to be a lack of training across the board on very specific things to do with autism, and especially your specific needs. Now, the one thing that people may not understand is just how much of a spectrum it is, despite the fact that everybody has heard of the spectrum. I don't think many people use that term all the time. Oh, I think so-and-so's on the spectrum. But they don't actually understand what it means and understand that a spectrum means that it's a very, very diverse group of people with very, very diverse group of needs, of strengths, of talents, and everything else. So this is somewhere where there is a lack of education, and there's also a lack of education on the strategies that are going to help people who are neurodivergent. And again, this pulls focus because people kind of only have these pictures in their head of, oh, these are the challenges, these are the deficits, these are the weird things about people who are neurodivergent, and they're maybe not putting their focus on the strengths that that person can bring to the party. Either way as well, there's often this sense of difference, right? Which is kind of, in fact, when I had my assessment, the very first question they asked me was, autism is all to do with difference, so tell me, why do you think you're different? And like, so of course that is kind of a prototype we have in our head. As soon as you have that label, people might look at you like you are different, when actually what you want to do is show up at work and get your job done. Sure, you want to be different because you're gonna kick ass and everyone's gonna see all the amazing things you can do in the workplace, but not just be like, oh, that person's a bit different, I don't know if I want to kind of spend time with them, and there's this maybe awkward feeling around it. Which leads on to my next point, which is that communication is obviously a big part of the autism diagnosis, and again varies massively across different people with autism, massively across different neurodivergent people, but communication is something that maybe is a challenge, and particularly communicating our own needs, but also maybe understanding the needs of others, or being able to process the needs of others and act on them. So there's these different things that are going on in terms of communication, which might kind of cover up strengths because people see a difference in communication, because maybe they see certain communication challenges. They perhaps think that those challenges exist throughout the working place. I sort of have the opposite thing where communication, I definitely have communication challenges, but somehow I've sort of managed to cover them up, and I don't even know how, because honestly I can go weeks without responding to messages because I find it so hard to respond to a message. I think people just think that I'm being snooty or ghosting them or something, but yeah, for me it's sort of the opposite, where I'm like, I can come across as a good communicator. I can actually come across as very good socially, but there's a lot of challenges going on behind the scenes, and I can't necessarily then kind of process what's happened and turn that into like good productive action and outputs. But people don't necessarily see it because they see the communication as a strength. So the fact that communication is often something that we are challenged with is something that is very visible to other people. So I think that's also why they focus on it. So finding the communication styles that are going to work for you, and I mean that in a very broad sense. I think probably let's make another video on communication just by itself, but it's like I said, that's a kind of very visible thing, and that's why people might focus on it. So what do we do? Yeah, there's all these reasons why it might be hard, and there's all these challenges, and people are going to be focusing on deficits, not focusing on strengths. So what you got to do, and like I said, this starts with yourself, is pull it back around to the strengths that you are bringing. And many times this is not about doing extra work or talking more. If you can understand yourself, it's actually going to be about putting more time into those things where they are your strengths. So there's time for that to shine, getting your needs met, putting strategies in place so that you can focus on your strengths. And that might involve talking to the employer initially to agree certain strategies, but it doesn't have to be something that you then focus on all the time. So I just wanted to say that because I think sometimes there is this perception that we've got to do so much extra work just to kind of get our basic needs met, which is sort of the case. Of course, we know there's so much extra thinking, there's so much extra work we're doing here, listening to this video. Like, other people don't have to do this just to be okay in the workplace, but you don't want to then create even more extra stuff. So try and get strategies in place as soon as possible, and then you can really focus on your strengths and let your work do the talking. I think that's like well, I already said there was a number one tip, which is to focus on yourself, but I think let the work do the talking. Let your strengths be the things that shine. Let them be undeniable because you have focused on your strengths. That's what we're looking for here. And if you're feeling like, well, maybe I'm really junior, maybe I don't know what my strengths are, maybe because I've been held back so much in the workplace and had so many challenges before, I haven't been able to develop skills as much as some people. And I was definitely worried about that because I feel like over time that's happened for me. So the other thing that you bring to the party is your own unique perspective. So even if you feel like you don't have additional skills or you're not sure how your strengths shine, which you will have things, and I encourage you to try and delve into what those are. But even if you feel like those things are not very present for you right now, the fact that you have a different perspective, the fact that you are able to see things in a different way is also a valuable thing for your organization, for your colleagues, for your teammates, for your customers, whoever it is that you're working with. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. Being able, first of all, inner work, to be able to understand yourself, understand your strengths, and then self-advocacy becomes important. I know it can feel like hard work, but self-advocacy so that you are explaining your needs and explaining your strengths and what's going to help those strengths come out. You will find that as you start to talk about this, you will get allies. There will be other people in the same situation as you. So hopefully you don't have to do all of this by yourself. There are other people who can help you and support you and be part of your support system, your support network. I don't know, part of your superhero club, you know, out there shining their own strengths as well. So once you've got that self-advocacy nailed, you can then move on to thinking about increasing education and training and understanding across an organization if you feel like it's weak. Now, again, this shouldn't be your job. I talked about this in the other video. It shouldn't necessarily be your job to be an advocate. You should get to show up at work and do your job just like other people do. But if you feel like there are things that you can see that can be changed and that's going to be positive for you and positive for other people who are neurodivergent, then it can be something that actually will make you feel like you're more fulfilled, more satisfied in your workplace because you've got something that you can speak up on and where you can see some really valuable change happening. I talked a little bit about a support system already, but I want you to also think about mentors and role models. Seek out other people. There are enough other people out there now that you can find role models who are neurodivergent and who've been able to carve good career paths. Now, I'm going to caveat that with, we know everyone's journey is different and we know that people vary wildly, both in their personal circumstances, but also in terms of how autism impacts them. So I know that because sometimes you can look at other people and be like, I just don't even know how did they go on that journey. But if you know that other people who are autistic can make waves in their career, in the workplace, can carve out a path, then that gives you some kind of a guiding light, even if you don't feel like it fully applies to you. And this is where mentoring can also come in. So see if in your organization you can find mentors. Maybe it's people outside of your organization. Maybe it's really light touch stuff, commenting on this video, or finding other people online who you can talk to. That can be really, really helpful. So find yourself a mentor who is neurodivergent, or it doesn't have to actually necessarily be somebody who's neurodivergent, but somebody who can be an ally, and they'll be able to help you with some of the more day-to-day challenges that are happening, and hopefully also help you really focus on your strengths. That's what this video is all about. How do we focus on strengths? So mentors are really great at doing that. They'll be able to pick out the things about you that are just like amazing. You may find that there are certain policies within your organization that you want to change. So really making sure you're promoting an inclusive culture overall in your organization and talking to your employer about that can be very, very helpful. If you find anything that is going against that, then you can bring it up and go and look for data on what helps to make inclusive organizations. There's already lots of data out there that says that diverse teams are more effective, more productive, more likely to have higher revenues. There's all sorts of data out there. So go and have a look for the data to support the promotion of inclusion in your workplace. And then that's really going to help you to kind of push through policies that are going to help your strengths to shine. And actually that in itself is a cultural thing. So if you are in an organization where all you're hearing is people moaning about stuff, people emphasizing what's wrong with something, maybe that's what you feel like you're doing as well, because you're just sucked into this culture, then that's something that needs to change, that can change, but it depends. In some places that can be very, very ingrained. But if you're maybe seeking out new employment, look for cultures where strengths are emphasized, where strategies are put in place to meet needs to allow strengths to be emphasized. So that's something, and like I said, it's a very cultural thing. If you think about it within yourself, like I've talked about loads in this video already, is that what you're doing? Are you helping to add to the culture that is promoting inclusion, that is looking at people's strengths, that is working towards kind of a big vision by bringing together the strengths of different people and working in different ways together? Because we can be really guilty of not doing that, even though we know what it's like to be excluded. I know that that's happened for me as well. Like I've definitely found myself, sometimes I'm so focused on meeting my own needs that I don't realize that I'm also then excluding others. So really look at that, look at what you're doing, and then talk to the leaders, the people around you, about strategies that they could put in place to promote more of an inclusive culture. And of course, feedback plays a really important part in this whole piece, in terms of you doing your own self-development, so receiving feedback about what's going on, about where your strengths are, about how you could promote those strengths more, about how you could make sure that your weaknesses are not standing in the way or causing kind of barriers to other people. And that's going to be helpful. But then you also, if there's a feedback loop within your organization, all the things that I've just talked about, you can be talking about in terms of giving formal or informal feedback to the people that you work with. And I know it can be difficult. If you're more junior, it can be more challenging to give feedback. You might feel like you can't do that, but many workplaces do have formal channels. A lot of the workplaces I've been in definitely haven't had formal channels, because I've been in startups, I've been in smaller businesses, and that often is a more difficult place to be in when it comes to talking about some of these things. But again, this comes down to really finding the people that you can talk to, starting there, and then ultimately, if you're in a small business and they're really not receptive and you're really struggling, you're finding it hard, it may be that you want to start looking for other places to work, whether you're in a small business or a large business. And I know we shouldn't have to do that, but there are other options out there for you. That's what I want you to know. There are other options. You might have to work hard for those options. You might have to be strategic about how you go about getting them, but there are options out there. Really, this is all about letting your strengths shine. You have strengths, you have skills, you have knowledge, you have networks. So what are you going to do to make sure that your strengths shine? I really encourage you to get out there and make sure this is what you're doing, even if it's just talking to yourself about your own strengths instead of focusing on those deficits. I know we're all in totally different situations. I'd really love to hear more about your particular scenario. Let me know by leaving a comment, and I will of course get back to you. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with anyone who needs to hear it. Go and focus on your strengths. See you later.